Good morning on this dreary, rainy, dark Wednesday, Thursday. What day is it? Do we really care? We're lighting the candle today to chase the clouds away, and we're stepping off into a world that works. So each week we get together and we record conversations, and they're dialogues that are unscripted. For some reason, I choose a topic and folks engage it, with as fully as they can. And the whole idea here is to bring some empowerment to a situation that may or may not be experiencing empowerment, maybe a stuckness, or maybe that there's an attitude that the world kind of looks gray and dark and dreary from time to time. Maybe, just maybe, in the next half hour we can make a difference with that and kick things up a notch, as Emerald used to say. So again, I'm Bill Carell. I'm interested in conversations that lead to something really good for people that I don't even know. As a result of that, I've invited my friend Ken and my friend Vanessa to join me here today, and I'll let you introduce yourselves. Ken?
I am Ken Caputo, and I'm the founder of Quester's Way, and today I'm happy to be here.
Vanessa?
Hey, awesome. Hi, everyone. Vanessa F. Lewis, and always happy to be here on this podcast. Glad you could join us as well. I'm a freelance writer, marketing copywriter, and an overall curious person.
Excellent. So I've got an idea today, and I'm wondering if we can actually just sort of back up and create an opportunity for taking a look at life through a different lens. Today, what I'd like to offer for discussion and distinguishing is a concept called wisdom. What's its history? What does it mean? How does it translate into the real world? And in your particular view, what is the access to wisdom, or possibly either experiencing it, transferring it, any of the above, or any of the above that I haven't mentioned that's silent? We'll just see who speaks first.
Take it from there? Yeah.
Or take it from wherever you're going to take it from.
Well, I guess I can speak to what I've come to recognize in wisdom from people who've demonstrated it that I trust, like mentors and things of that nature. And generally speaking, they're very, very good at asking questions, which we talk about a lot. They're curious, and they're not overly invested in what they know. So it's just kind of, what they know, what they've experienced is just a framework for going deeper. And the really brilliant people that I've been fortunate enough to know and speak to all say the same thing. The more they learn, the less they know. So there's just this kind of, I don't know, the people that express wisdom that I've seen are just very, there's a lot of humility. It's their efforts are focused outward, and there's this inner cultivation of self in service to something much greater than themselves. And really what they do is they bring out the best in you. They bring out your wisdom that you already have, and they're genuinely excited and enthusiastic about that.
Not a bad start, my friend. Vanessa?
Yeah, I love that. That was great. So I'm just going to tie on to everything Ken's saying. I like that he said the more we learn, the less we know. That's why, as I'm going way back for all of us, for each of us, but when you're 17, 18 years old, you think you know everything. And then you get a little bit older and you go, wait a minute, okay, maybe I don't. And then we get even older and we go, oh boy, I really don't. And then we get even older than that and we think, yeah, I've got some things to learn here. And then we finally get to this point, which I'm not at. And actually I still have some wonderful, wise, but still useful people on the call with me on this panel. So maybe they're not there yet. But, isn't it amazing when we get to this point where we go, okay, I think I know some things about life. But then I think true wisdom is, and again, following along with what Ken says, you know, you realize you get to know so much that then you know that you still don't know everything. and so we're just kind of in this cycle of life where we're learning, and I want to stay on topic, but I do also, this just came to my heart, is that when one of the most difficult things to do, it's funny the way we're programmed as human beings, because one of the most difficult things to do, I found in my life, is when you learn something and then you have to learn it a different way from the way you've originally learned it. One of the hardest things to do is to unlearn something and relearn it. And that takes great wisdom. And sometimes that wisdom cannot, or I'll even say can never come from us entirely. It needs to be from something greater than us. But I like that Ken was saying, when we're in the company of those who we perceive as having wisdom, you know, there's a great humility about them, and there's a great feeling that they are there, also realizing, I believe, correct me if I was misunderstanding you, Ken, but that they're there knowing that they're to be in service to whatever their calling is, or to whatever the world is asking them to do, or to something greater than them, or all the above. But they go in with this sense of humility. And so there's an air of wisdom about them. And they know that they're serving something greater than them. And I think that's where, and we could talk about the definition of wisdom, but I think that's, from a holistic perspective, that's where wisdom lies. It's when knowing that we don't and will never know everything, but there is something out there that we can tap into that does. And then we respect that we'll still never have all the answers, but at least we have resources, or a resource to satisfy our curiosities. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you. And I, at an early age, it's been attributed to Dean Martin. The interview that I saw was, he was talking about what wisdom is for him, and how he created this whole persona that has nothing to do with what his real life looks like. Made him look like a philandering drunk and all those sorts of things. However, it was a role that he was so brilliantly playing, that his home life with one wife, his entire lifetime, and all of his brilliant children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what he said was, wisdom's a funny thing. Wisdom comes from good judgment. And where does good judgment come from? Experience. And where does experience come from? Bad judgment. So through a lifetime, you get to have these epiphanies, if you will. You start off as a 17-year-old, Vanessa, you know, to kind of use your metaphor for a moment. The song When I Was 17, you know, was a very good year. Whole idea is that life is open, life is possible, life is all these things that you think can go from being a dream to be converted into reality. And as time goes on, at that age, you don't know that you don't know that you don't know everything. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of consulting the notion of wisdom is that it's research. Anyone who is interested in wisdom is less interested in what they have to say and more interested in what's going to be said next, you know, which means engaging with people who have a variety of experiences and a variety of research that they've done in their own life. You kind of create this kitchen of the mind, if you will. So we go to the pantry, and what's on the shelf is all the traditions that we know and trust and love and have been taught, all of the personal experience, the successes, the failures, you know, the experience of the gray day where nothing seems possible and yet something really wonderful happens. So that kitchen of the mind has all of these ingredients that can be drawn on, and they won't be drawn on according to a recipe. The wisdom traditions almost always have to do with asking questions for which you have no answer when you ask the question. Rarely is it a question that you're going to have somebody give you the answer that you're looking for. More interesting to find out what they've got to bring to the party, what they've got in their pantry, to really make this a wonderful dish. A bouillabaisse instead of a shrimp cocktail, a nice Irish stew instead of, leg of lamb, that sort of thing. So as we're talking about the concept of wisdom, I want to shift it just a little bit and kind of ask you to, put our finger, lick it and put finger in the air and see what direction the wind's blowing. How interested generally do you think the population, in your experience, how interested do you think they are in the conversation for wisdom?
Depends on the population, I think right now there's probably a little bit that it could be a little bit more of a challenging thing if you're in a place of crisis, so if you're scared and you're upset and you're angry and frustrated, and there's a whole heck of a lot of that right now, it's difficult to be in a place of thinking about higher needs. That's that whole Maslow, hierarchy. So, if you're worried about someone close to you dying or losing your job or what the leadership of the country is going to be, whatever, that can make it challenging. So, and it's interesting because one of my, John, one of my mentors, my main mentors, he's looking at everything that's happening right now with concern, and also he calls it cheerful indifference. Because he's not fixed in time, so there's been years of things that have gone right and things that have gone wrong, and there's a moment we're in now, and then there'll be more things that go right and wrong on the other side. But it's like something that's been earned over 60 years, 70 years of practice. And, so for a lot of people, I think it could be really hard to have a higher level conversation when you're just trying to figure out how the basic needs are going to be met.
Interesting. And the other kind of thing that I'm thinking about that, knowing John, as I know him a little bit, not anywhere close to the level of distinctions that you have with him, but also I think being in the presence of wisdom isn't necessarily that something even gets said out loud. There's a shift in the body of a participant of the conversation to where a new awareness, like similar to when you actually break the code on rhythmic breathing, and now swimming is a possibility because it's not something that you have to think the steps, they're part of you, or riding a bicycle and that whole distinction of balance, right? So as the conversation goes on and people are seeing different things in their own mind's eye in terms of how does this apply to what's going on for me, and what we're seeing now is an increased dependency on electronic devices and time on screen and all the rest of that sort of thing. The folks that are less than, shall we say, generous, on social media in terms of their comments and the things that they say because it's easy to type it or dictate it into their phone, that they would never say face to face to another human being, but they're not relating to that human being as a person. They're relating to them as the words that they read and how they can possibly, score points by being a little more pithy or more arrogant or whatever it is that is motivating them. In some cases, it might be they want to be more loving. You just don't know. But as we go forward here, our teaching traditions, doing anything to instill or inspire the quest for wisdom. Are they doing anything? We talked about critical thinking a few podcasts ago, and we talked about some other things. And how do we get folks to take a look at the world as it is right now? Not because it's good enough, but is it feeding them for the long term in terms of all their life's ambitions? of what they want to see happen? Are they even taking the time to dream for themselves about what would life look like in their world if the world were working?
What do you think, Vanessa?
Well, that's just it. I'm still thinking. So if you want to go ahead, please free, Ken. These wheels turn, but they're a little slow.
Yeah, it's it's, I guess, coming back to just the people who have modeled these things. It's always been interesting to me, like they'll bring their knowledge and experience to bear as a tool without being overly invested in whether it's right or wrong. It's just part of the grand experiment, and it's part of their contribution. And it's the other thing that I found interesting is and this is my own personal experience, having taught for a lot of years, everyone's a teacher if you're paying attention, so it's not every wisdom tradition, every philosophy I've studied, it just doesn't matter. There's value there if you're in a place of where you're open to recognizing it. So again, I mean, if there's one thing I could teach everyone, kids, adults, from a young age, that I could instill, it would be open curiosity. So if someone says, you know what, I think you're a jerk, if you said that to my mentor, he'd say, really, you think that? Why? Yeah. He'd be genuinely interested. He wouldn't, and he'd want to have a conversation, he'd be curious about what led you there. And he really probably wouldn't even take it personally, So, and it would be the exact same response if you walked up to him and said, I think you're the most amazing human I've ever met. He'd actually be uncomfortable with that. First of all, he'd be like, it's not me doing this. I'm just part of a bigger thing and paying attention, but he would just be, again, you'd be met with curiosity. Why do you think that? What led you there? So.
Yeah. And his next sentence would be, obviously you haven't met very many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would immediately want to help you, give you an opportunity to expand your perspective outside of what you already know, so that you have a new reference base to make future decisions and choices from.
Yeah.
So he shatters echo chambers constantly, and for no other reason than he's committed to you and your evolution, whatever that means to you.
Yes. So that's really an interesting word that you just brought up. And do you know people that are in echo chambers have no idea they're in echo chambers?
Oh, of course. Yeah, no. And that's, you see that we all are, I mean, it's, that the expression paradigm shift.
Yes.
And just paradigm, so you're operating under one frame set, and then you're presented with new information, and all of a sudden it changes it. Changes your perception of it. So we use in our leadership course, we use the term paradigm shed. Like you're constantly trying to shed your old paradigm like a snake skin.
Yep.
Because whatever your reference base is right now for every single one of us and everyone listening, it's incomplete. So you're in the echo chamber as long as you continue to think that what you know is complete, as opposed to actively trying to shed, your view of the world to make room for something more,
Mm.
Doesn't mean you have to believe it either or agree with it.
And the access to recognizing the echo chamber, if you will, since we're using that term right now, or the particular limiting paradigm that you're operating in, is to answer the questions of how is it for you? What is real? What is true? And the answers to those questions show you kind of the end of your horizon in terms of your thinking. And being involved with people that can ask questions beyond that horizon is in my opinion, I think culturally, when that's happening at home within the family environment, when it's happening, if you're a practicing religious person, in your church congregation, if it happens at school, if it happens in your social civic groups like the Lions and Seroptimists or whatever else you belong to in order to make this world a better place with your hands. All of those sorts of things that we normally talk about, what are our values? What are our core beliefs? And what you'll find is in most of those cases, the core beliefs don't get demonstrated in that term any longer. They get demonstrated in the actual behavior of the people that are participating in those groups with you, such that your community becomes all the people that you interact with, successfully, unsuccessfully, or just, happen to drive by. When you see something that gets changed in the world, like a monument being erected or a monument being taken down, all of those things have an impact in terms of, opportunity to question where you stand with regard to what's going on over there. My big question has to do with where is the challenge to question limiting beliefs, to question the status quo, or to only have a fight or a flight response to what doesn't seem to be working or what does seem to be working in the world. I don't know where we go. I don't know how this gets, how we care for and feed and nurture the people that are really interested in growing their culture, growing their community, their families, their church congregations, etc. And I really wonder, and I would like to hear from more people than just our group, as we go forward in the future. I'd like to hear people that are actively engaged in the whole Black Lives Matter thing, what they're passionate about in terms of that. What does that mean to you, and what difference will the actions that you're taking make? I'm old enough to have been on campus, and Ken, I think you're a few years younger than me, probably about 10. But, I was on campus in 1972, where we had the Black Panthers, we had SDS. I actually got to see Abby Hoffman, who came to the University of Colorado and spoke, to a bunch of people, and it just went on and on and on. There were folks that were from all over the world, and from the Middle East, the Far East. So there was really this kind of a cultural melting pot, and at that point in time, it was more or less where at the end of an era through the 60s, when after the Kennedys were assassinated and Martin Luther King was assassinated, that there was a choice for the culture to take. And one had to do with reacting from law and order. The other one had to do with reacting from empowerment of ideas that are eccentric. The whole Saul Alinsky, we were talking about this last time, Rules for Radicals. And essentially, that book was written by a college professor, not to make life hard for people, but to start to get people to think about what in the United States would constitute that rebel spirit, that was present at the dawning of our country. When would we say we've gotten to the point where enough is enough, and now it's time for us to change the whole paradigm with regard to our constitutional republic? I think that's a fascinating conversation. I think taken at an academic level, there's a lot of interesting thought in there, most of which has very little to do what's good for people, but it has everything to do with creating a recipe for change that is not the typical change that people look for slowly through a political process over 100 years. It's how to accelerate it and do it in a short period of time. And Rules for Radicals can also be taken to mean people who are interested in shaking the tree and calming it down as well. So I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the link that I put up on the on our Lighting the Candle page last time, but it's quite a remarkable treatise. And I do recommend that people read that, because it opens your mind in terms of how people are thinking and what a lot of these groups are using as a roadmap, to make a difference in their own particular statements. So that was a run-on sentence for a minute or two. But the point is that I'm still playing with this whole idea that all the power is in the listening. whatever is out there that is drawing and demanding more speaking on a particular subject or topic, and as it starts to become more widely held as something that's worth giving the time of day to, how does that transform into, first of all, maybe some contrarian type conversation, then maybe what some people would say, this is actually an interesting idea, and then it becomes a movement. And we've seen that happen a half dozen times in the last 20 years on different things, most of which seem to have been spawned by news events or spawned by a political situation or what have you. But I'm real interested in, do any of those have anything at all with doing what works, what's right, what benefits everybody involved, or are they mostly about being a few decibel higher than the other point of view? Don't even ask me what I just said.
Leaving space for you, Vanessa. Yep.
I just, I'm looking at the time. Is this something we're going to continue into the next segment, Bill? Because I'd love to lead off there. And just so I understand what you were asking, you're saying that, your observation is all the power. You're still playing with this idea that all the power is in the listening. And from what I understood from what you just said, are we sometimes, when we speak, how are we listening? Again, this is how I'm interpreting what you said. How are we listening? And are we listening with the intent to understand the other party, or are we listening with the intent to rebut what the other party just said, or to acknowledge agreement with what they said? But usually, I think, especially in this day and age, it's more to rebut what someone just said. And the people that are out there speaking, when they're speaking over the noise, are they trying to just get their own point of view out, or are they trying to say, I hear you, and thank you for speaking out? Is that kind of what you were asking? Like, what is the motivation behind us all speaking out over each other's noise? Is that kind of along the line?
You know what? I think that's a great follow-on, and quite frankly, I'm only looking at if there's something that's being paid for by someone to continuously broadcast. Is that the same thing as people who show up, for example, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like people that go to a concert, for example, there are certain folks that when you find out they're going to have a concert, it's sold out the day that it's announced. Paul McCartney ever has a concert in the future, gone. All the tickets are gone, right? Now, a lot of those tickets are purchased by people who are going to resell them for a lot more money. But the point is that the listening, the demand for certain people, and if you think about we'll stay in the music analogy for a minute, and just for your comfort, I think we have about 3 or 4 more minutes on this segment. If we think about all the so-called one-hit wonders over the years, the hundreds and maybe 1,000 different folks who have made it into the top 40 of popular music, the Casey Kasem top 40 for this week, and we're talking about some really great artists. And quite frankly, if Tommy Tutone, who wrote 8675309, announces that they're going to have a concert, they may or may not sell out to the biggest stadium in one single day. However, if Electric Light Orchestra comes back out and Jeff Lynne says, not only are we going to do that, but I'm going to bring you some Wilburys music, I'm going to bring you some John Lennon stuff that I produced. Do you see what I'm saying? That listening that gets created out there tends to sort of take on a life of its own. It doesn't even have to have that person either still be alive, Elvis, the Beatles, John Lennon. It doesn't have to have anybody that's saying you should listen to this music? How is it that Jimi Hendrix keeps getting adopted by every single generation of teenagers as their music? You see what I'm saying? Some things are so powerful. It has less to do with what the actual message is, and it may have a lot more to do with the expectation or the potential conformity or what the culture is telling you is the right thing to listen to and to enjoy. I don't know.
So you're almost asking a cultural question in this case. You're asking, what is it, what art, or what is it that is spoken that's so powerful that it resonates with every generation, right?
Yeah, so rather than agreeing with you and answering your question, would you like to leave it there and we'll sign off for this time and pick it up on the other side?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome. So you want to say goodbyes, Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. See you on the other side.
Ken?
Yeah, sounds good. See you on the other side.
Thank you all for playing with us. We're having a ball today, and we will sign off for now and start lighting the candle, A World That Works, in a few minutes.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.